Hello everyone, good day. Welcome to the webinar hosted by GemAtlas with Dr. Daniel Nyfeler, the Managing Director of Gubelin Gem Lab and Provenance Proof. After his master's in geology, Daniel did his PhD in mineralogy, including a research project on superconductors at the IBM Research Lab. He then worked in an international management consultancy before becoming managing director at the Gubelin Gem Lab in 2003, overseeing the expansion of the lab to Hong Kong as well as New York. Dr. Daniel is also in charge of Provenance Proof, a spin-off company that develops and markets technologies to bring more transparency in the supply chain of colored gemstones. GemAtlas is an online global B2B networking platform for the gems and jewelry industry. We provide a platform of equal opportunities to all industry professionals to take their businesses online, freely connect with each other, and generate new business leads at a more global level. We are honored to have Dr. Daniel share his valuable insights with us today. The topic for today is simplifying the gemstone trade. Over to you, Daniel.
Thank you, Nicole, and thank you to our friends at GemAtlas for giving me the opportunity to have your platform for 1 hour. As Nicole said, the topic is simplifying the gemstone trade. Let me add another comment to that. Is basically what I try to talk about are how expectations from customers, and I pretty much talk about the end customer of our industry, so the person that is buying jewelry, that is buying gemstones at the retail desk or online, how these expectations have evolved over the last couple of years, and how we as an industry and as us as a one small player in that industry think we can help and should react to those shifts in expectations from customers. One first expectations that we observe is that customers today have a different or expect a higher level of transparency when buying jewelry and buying gemstones. I do not talk about the transparency of the stone as such, so not the physical transparency, how good you can see through a stone. I mean transparency about the stone, the jewelry itself, the material, but also the background, the history of where is it coming from, how has it been mined, who was involved, who was participating in this entire product. That's the kind of transparency that I mean. And today's consumers, they are A, educated, and they are B, critical. So they want to have a lot of information, and they want to have verifiable information that is coming from a trustworthy source. So if we look at this beautiful emerald here mounted in a ring, this is, by the way, quite a famous stone. It is the famous Rockefeller emerald, which sold a couple of years ago in an auction house for some $5.5 million US. We had the privilege to see that stone and test that stone multiple times. It's a Colombian emerald, no clarity enhancement, very, very clean stone, very nice stone. We as a gem lab, we provide paper to these type of stones so that the buyer of that stone has a bit more information about what is the identity of that stone. So in this case, is it indeed an emerald, or is it some kind of other green stone, or just a piece of glass? Is that emerald authentic? So is it indeed coming from the earth? Is it a natural mineral, or is it maybe a synthetic stone? Then treatments, of course, when we talk about colored gemstones specifically, treatments is a big topic. Has the stone been treated? If yes, in which way has it been treated? And then ultimately the country of origin, which is also a peculiarity of the colored gemstone industry, that is the country of origin plays an important role and also can affect the price quite significantly. These are the aspects that gem labs traditionally can answer. Now, today's consumers, they might have other questions. They might want not only to know whether this is a Colombian stone or whether it's a Zambian stone or Afghani emerald. They might want to know from which area does it come specifically, or even from which mine does it come. They might have questions such as, oh, I want to have it from a large-scale mine, because large-scale mines, they can pay better salaries, they have certain security standards, they might, I can be sure that they pay taxes and so on. Or other consumers might say, no, I prefer small-scale mine gemstones, because small-scale, these people are then more independent. It's kind of maybe less, we want to support the local community by buying from small scale or even artisanal sources. These are the questions which might come from today's consumer as well. Maybe also the period when it was mined. Was it just a recent production, this year, last year? Or is it a stone that is coming from with a heritage that has been mined 20, 50, 100 years ago? Is the company that was mining, or the company that is cutting the stone, do they consider certain environmental standards, social standards? Is it informal mining, so maybe illicit or even illegal mining, or is it a formally proper company that is entitled, or an individual that is entitled to do the mining wherever he or she is doing that? These are the kind of questions that consumers have. Now, does that matter? Is it indeed relevant to the end consumers? Yes, it is. This is a survey, a very recent survey from the consulting company Bain, titled The Global Diamond Industry, from this year and last year. They were specifically looking at 3 markets, the US, China, and India. And one of the questions they asked in this survey was whether consumers consider sustainability factors, such as environmental, social, governmental standards, when making a decision, a purchasing decision for diamond jewelry. And quite surprising to me is that they care a lot. The younger generations, which is the left side column in each of the 3 groups, is even more concerned and more interested in knowing about sustainability when buying diamond jewelry. But specifically in India, even the elder generations, 2/3 do care about that. So this is a factor that they consider when they make buying decisions. So it does matter for the end consumers. So we as an industry should be able to give them the information. And this is now the big gap that we have. You know, our industry is somehow not capable to give sufficient information, to give credible information and data to the end consumer, how the stones are sourced, whether certain sustainability aspects, environmental, social aspects are properly considered in the process of the stone coming from the mine until it is mounted in a piece of jewelry at the retail desk. Our industry, in fact, even has quite of a bad reputation. This is a statement from the Global Witness NGO from almost 2 years ago. And they say that the gemstone industry has a bad reputation. It gets related with corruption, with conflict, and with connections to armed groups. So that this is horrible, you know, and we as an industry have to kind of work on our image. It's not as such that everything is bad, of course not, but we seem to struggle as an industry to explain what we are doing and how, and that we are doing not that of a bad job. So that was the motivation of the Gubelin Gem Lab to come up with an initiative called the Provenance Proof. The mission statement of Provenance Proof is that we want to develop technologies and we want to market technologies that bring transparency into our industry. Specifically, we want to bring transparency into the supply chain of gemstones. We have 2 approaches, or we have basically 2 goals. We want to give traceability and trackability to the gemstones that are traveling along the supply chain. We have 2 basic group of technology. One is physical tracers, such as nanoparticles, which we apply, for example, in the emerald paternity test. And we have then digital technologies, such as digital ledgers, also known as blockchains, that we apply in a service or in a platform that is referred to as the Provenance Proof blockchain. And the aim of both group of technologies is to kind of make the stones trackable and traceable all along the supply chain, from the mine to the cutter, via one or multiple steps of dealers, to gem labs, maybe to wholesalers, and then to jewelers, retailers, and ultimately to the end consumer. The first technology where we are using physical anchors or physical tracers, this we have launched almost 3 years ago, and this is already quite well-established technology. Many companies are using it. For example, the biggest emerald miner in the world, to our knowledge, the company Gemfields, they are operating a very large emerald mine in Zambia, in the Kachem area. Here you can see my colleague Clemens Link. He is our head of development, and he is applying this technology on some, I think that was like 10 kilograms of rough emerald crystals from Zambia, putting these physical traces into the stone before they go to the auction to Singapore, when they got sold to dealers, which then were cutting the stones. These traces, they remain in the stone, they survive the cutting process, they survive all the treatment processes, and at any stage along the value chain, they can be taken out if somebody wants to take them out, and then we can read that information and confirm that it's indeed coming from the Gemfields mine in Kachem in Zambia. That's why we call that test a paternity test, or the emerald paternity test. That worked quite well. Meanwhile, we have a significant percentage of the annual global production of high quality emeralds carrying this technology. Let me talk about the digital, the other type of technology, which is a digital tracking of the gemstones. There we are using distributed ledger technology, also known as blockchain technology. And I want to give you a very simple explanation of what this technology does. It kind of creates like a virtual twin, a digital twin of each gemstone or of each bag of gemstones. And you can think of it as a logbook. The logbook gets started in the mine. So if you are a miner, regardless whether you're big or small, you describe the stone that you were just mining, you take a picture, and you actually start writing the first page of this logbook. When you sell the stone, for example, to a trader, you do not only hand over the stone, you also hand over this logbook, and then the trader, the new owner, is the one that is entitled to see the past history of that stone, and B, who is entitled to write the next chapter. And so it goes on to the cutter, maybe to a gem lab, to a jeweler, to a retailer, and ultimately to the end consumer. And every owner is writing his or her chapter into this book, and at the end we have a complete story of the history of that stone. This then, for example, on the screen can look like that. Here we have a 9-carat emerald. And this is what the cutter was writing into it. So he was entering the new weight, he was entering the new dimensions, he was adding a picture of the stone, how it looks after cutting. And the previous picture that you can see here in the center of the slide from the rough crystal, this was not a picture that has been done by the cutter. This was the picture that the miner has entered into this blockchain. And now you can basically put together the bits and pieces from this logbook, from this digital logbook, and then create a story that then ultimately the retailer can make a customized story to tell to the end consumer. So this is really fascinating. It's a massively rich source of data and imagery and movies that gets gathered together on this blockchain for the retailer and ultimately the end consumer to look into and to have verifiable, immutable information about a gemstone. So this provenance proof blockchain is DLT technology. As I said, it's offering quite a bit of security. It is immutable due to the nature of blockchain. It can be used for all type of gemstones, so ruby, sapphire, emeralds, even what is referred to as semi-precious gemstones, even diamonds if you want, and pearls. And this platform is open to all members of the industry. We offer the use of this blockchain for free. There is no charge for registration, there is no charge for uploading stones, forwarding stones, receiving stones, or looking into the history of the stones. The costs for this service are borne by the Gubelin family. It is quite low tech. You don't need any software. You don't even have to download an app. It is web-based, so a smartphone is good enough. So even the guy here in Africa can use that technology just by having a smartphone and having sometimes access to the internet. So it's also perfectly suitable for artisanal and small-scale mining. It's also perfectly suitable for semi-precious stones. We have a women-only cooperative in Madagascar. They are using cut-offs from semi-precious stones, and they make very affordable, very cheap jewelry, and they are putting all their stones onto our provenance-proof blockchain. The visibility is controlled. It's not as such that everybody on this platform can see all the stones. No, it's, again, think of a logbook. Only the person owning or having the logbook in his hand can see the history of that specific gemstone. So it's a controlled visibility. Meanwhile, we have a community of more than 300 companies from many different countries all over the world. We have more than 30,000. I think by today it's more than 50,000 stones which are on chain and which get traded on the chain. Right now, we are working on some additional services, such as inventory management systems, such as a marketplace. That is coming soon. We're going to keep you posted. It's not only that you can do a better storytelling and a more credible and verifiable storytelling. Having your stones on such a platform is also make it very easy for you to fulfill the satisfaction of auditors, for example, or regulators, banks, insurances, and so on. So that's going to help you also in gaining a profile and reducing your workload in fulfilling the expectations of these other stakeholders. This brings me to the second point. Another expectations that we believe to see what clients and customers nowadays want is autonomy. Autonomy in making their decisions. So these were the questions. The ones in orange here are the questions that we try to answer by means of the provenance-proof technologies. But then there are other questions. What is the quality of that stone? Is that a good stone? Is that a very good stone? Is it a more average stone? What is the rarity? Is this stone something rare? Is it kind of a once in a world or a unique piece? Or is it something where you have a reasonable amount of comparable material? And ultimately, what is the price and the value? So we have also thought about how we can help give a bit more autonomy, give a bit more orientation and comparability to the end consumer. That's why we came up with the Gubelin gemstone rating system. To explain a bit more, to elaborate a bit more, the colored gemstones are a difficult thing to understand for the end consumer, for everybody who is not an expert. There are hundreds of different types and colors and varieties of gemstones. You have certain effects, you have different shapes, then you have treatments, you know. It's not that important for diamonds, but for colored gemstones, it's very important. You have the different origins. Again, that's a peculiarity of colored gemstones. You have phenomenon, you have certain trade color terms, think of pigeon blood or royal blue and so on. And all that makes it really tough for end customers to kind of put that in context and understand what is now, how does that affect the quality and the rarity, the beauty of a gemstone that they are about to buy. Diamonds, it's easier. In diamonds, we have a wonderful system called the 4 Cs that is in place, that is kind of universally accepted. And that kind of works, you know, everybody can, with a little bit of investing time, get a decent idea about how good the quality of that stone is, even with the pricing, you know, with certain price lists that are out there in the market. There's no such thing for colored gemstones. And there is not even any kind of commonly agreed quality criteria in place. So when buying a gemstone, a colored gemstone in jewelry, the end consumer depends pretty much only on the advice and on the judgment of the person selling him or selling her that stone. And that person, the seller, is obviously not a neutral person because he wants to make the best possible price. So it's quite natural that the seller will kind of talk nicely about the quality and the rarity of his stone. What we thought is we want to kind of come up with a system that is A, reducing the complexity, and B, that is pretty comprehensive in integrating as much parameters and characteristics as possible when describing a gemstone. The aspects that we are including is quality, rarity, and salience. I'm going to elaborate on that in a minute. And we basically are compressing these different aspects into one single number, the Gubelin points. As I said, we want to reduce the complexity that is inherent to colored gemstones, and we want to give orientation, direction, and comparability to the end consumer. This is how it looks like. It's not the same thing as a GemLab report. It's a very different thing. The format is also much smaller. It does not have certain traits as a GemLab report is having. So it basically shows a picture of the stone, it shows the rating, and it gives very few other information such as the weight and telling what the type of stone is. It's a very simple document. The gemstone rating system we have offered, or we have launched just recently, some 3 months ago. We are not offering it yet for the entire realm of colored gemstones, but we have built it for most high value colored gemstones, the type of stones that are listed here on this slide. You can see all this information also on our website, of course. So you might want to check the website as well later on. Now, what parameters are included in the rating? As I said, quality, rarity, and salience. Quality, the blue part in this graph on the right-hand side, is the most important part. It contributes the most to the rating. Quality we further split up into color, and then color we further split up into hue, saturation, tone, and homogeneity. So each of these subparameters we are rating individually. Then quality is also made up of clarity and transparency and of cut and brilliance. So all these aspects are assessed and then end up in the quality rating. Then rarity is another important group that contributes to the rating. Rarity we break up into the type of gemstone. So for example, a ruby is more rare than an aquamarine and so on. We also include treatment. So a stone that is untreated gets a higher rating than a stone that is treated. And the size, again, that's quite straightforward. A bigger stone is considered more rare than a small stone. Saliency is something that we have introduced and thought about and discussed about a long time. This is addressing the extent of exceptionality or attractiveness of a gemstone that is beyond the objective quality categories. You might have to look at salience as being the capability of a gemstone to please your eye or to somehow stick out of the crowd. So this is how, on the right side, this is how such a gemstone rating looks like. As I said, it basically features the points, in this case, 78.1 points. It features a reference number, the date, it shows which variety the stone is and the weight, so that you can kind of compare that document with the stone in your hand. The rating starts at 75 points and it goes up to 100 points. The rating system has been inspired by the Parker wine rating, so a rating system that is applied to rate wines of different quality, different vintages, and different years. So this is somehow which got us the motivation and which made us decide also to go for a certain number range. We also allocate a description, so a verbal descriptor to specific ranges. So for example, a stone that makes between 75 and 80 points get the denominator fair, and then up to 85 points good, and then fine, superior, excellent, outstanding, and exceptional. So far, we have done quite a lot of ratings already. We have only like 1 or 2 stones, I believe, or very few stones, which were ending up in this highest category between 97.5 points and 100 points. So the bulk, what we see so far is the bulk of the gemstones, they end up somewhere between 80 and 95 points. It's very hard for a gemstone to reach higher. Stones which might not make 75 points because their quality is too poor, or the treatment is significant, or a combination of these aspects. For those stones, we do not issue a rating document at all. So the service is free, provided that it is ordered together with a GemLab report. So we kind of want to create awareness. So all the stones that we get in this year, 2021, for which a report is ordered, we just automatically issue also a gemstone rating. If the stones that we get just for the rating, so if the owner says he doesn't want to have a report from us, but only the rating, then we charge 250. And the impact that we see, or the impact that we hope to get with that gemstone rating service, is that we can give orientation and direction to end consumers and also to the industry. It is especially useful for online sales. So we have a lot of positive feedback from people that are already trading or selling and buying stones on online platforms, because that helps them giving a bit of orientation when you cannot see the stone in your hand. What we do with this service is also shifting a bit of the authority, a bit of the authority of interpretation of what is rarity and what is quality of gemstones. We're shifting that from the trader over to the end consumer. So we want to empower the end consumer by giving him a tool to get orientation. The rating does have certain subjective elements, specifically this salience, but it is not random. We have defined very tight guidelines for our gemologists when they do the rating, based on the decades of experience that we have with seeing the best stones in the world. So we have gone through our database. We can see what are the stones that get the highest prices, that have the highest value, and based on this vast amount of data we have in our database, we were defining, or this is giving us the guidelines for doing the rating. So let me wrap it up. We hope that with this fulfill this shifted expectations from customers. With provenance proof, we want to we give technologies, transparency technologies to the industry. They are established, they are available, they are robust and safe, and they are either free for the blockchain, for example, or they are affordable. Transparency into the supply chain is not only helping you selling your stones, but it also helps you fulfilling the expectations that other stakeholders have. The brands, the big brands, they come up with certain expectations on you, the regulators, banks, insurance, and so on. And then the Gubelin Gemstone Rating Service is giving orientation and comparability. It does reduce the complexity that we have in colored gemstone. It does not replace the sales pitch, the sales talk of the retailer or of the seller in general. It does not, with a simple number, you cannot kind of explain the full beauty of a gemstone, of course not, but it's giving some kind of orientation. That's already my part. I hope I was not too long. I now go out of the screen sharing, and I would, I'm very much looking forward now to your questions. Yes, I have a question from Janice Snape. She is asking what type of tracers are used and how are they removed from a stone? Very good question. Thank you, Janice. So the type of traces that we are using are best described as being invisible traces. You know, the traces we are using right now for the emerald paternity test, they have think of little spheres, and these spheres have a size of about 100 nanometers. This is so small, 100 nanometers, you cannot see, even with the best optical microscope, you cannot see those 100 nanometer spheres. So this is smaller than a fraction of the diameter of a human hair. So there's actually no need to remove these particles. They are part of the stone, they go into the stone, but it's not a treatment that we do when we apply those particles to the stone. And they go into the stone, into the deepest, tiniest fissures or structures of the stone. Even if the stone looks in the loop or in the microscopy fissure-free, completely clean, there are still kind of openings in the structure of the stone that allow these particles to go in. So there's no need to remove them. Now, the only reason to remove them is when we get a stone from the owner and says, hey, Gubelin or Provenance proof, please tell me where this stone is coming from. Then we have the recipe, and this is our IP, to take these particles out, to read the information that is contained in these stones. By the way, this is synthetic DNA that we are using, and then read out that information and then decode it and see what was the mining company, what was the mining period, and so on. I hope, Janice, that this is answering your question. Good. Now, Binifer is asking me a question. Does this apply to all gemstones? Now, I do not know what you mean with does this apply to all gemstones. If we are referring to the emerald paternity test, no. The emerald paternity test is applicable for emerald, and these kind of physical traces, these particles, we can also apply on other type of gemstones. We have done feasibility studies for certain other type of colored gemstones. We have done it for pearls also. We have done trials on diamonds. But for examples with certain type of corundum, certain type of sapphires and rubies, it does not work. So we do not have the physical tracers available for all type of gemstones. However, the blockchain, this is perfectly available for any type of gemstones and even diamonds and pearls. I hope this is answering your question, Binifer. Tatiana Lee, hi Tatiana, is asking a question, why haven't you included the origin of a stone as a factor in your rating system? Yes, very good point. I can tell you, Tatiana, we had long discussions about origin. And the thing is that origin is a controversial topic. Traditionally, origin was added to a gemstone, or the information of origin was added to a gemstone because it was kind of became of a brand, you know, like Kashmir sapphires are the one with this, with this fascinating diffuse but very intense blue color. Colombian emeralds are the one with the straightest green and the most saturated green, and so on. Now this has changed again. That's what I mean with shifting expectations from consumers. Nowadays, the origin might also mean something different. Think of Burma, Burma, Myanmar. Traditionally, Burmese rubies are the ones which have this intense red color, pigeon blood color or rabbit eye color, and so on, which was very coveted and people wanted to have that. Now there is a certain part of the consumers, they might say, "Oh, I'm a bit reluctant to buy Burmese rubies because I do not want to support certain systems in that country." So it was difficult for us now to judge. Should we now put a high rate or a low rate to a certain origin? That made it pretty difficult. And another reason was also that we said that for the end consumer, it might be ultimately more important to have a judgment on the quality of the stone and on the rarity, because the origin is kind of more of a moving target and might shift too much over time. That's why we said for the time being we do not include origin in the rating. Katharina Jacobs has a question. I just read it to you directly. Hello, Daniel, how are you? I'm really enjoying the webinar. I would like to know more about the blockchain technology that you are implementing. Can you please let me know the process? How do I register for it? How do I explain to my clients? What can I do to promote that I use these conflict-free gemstones? And how can I find vendors who are willing to sell me these gemstones that have this technology implemented already? Great question, Catherine. So how to get on board? That's very simple. Go to provenanceproof.com and apply for the registration. We're going to do a little background check on you, a KYC check on you. That's going to take a couple of days. Once this is through, you get your credentials to log in, and then you can upload the stones on the blockchain. You can forward the stones. You can just do your stuff on the blockchain. That's actually straightforward and quite easy. How do you explain to your clients? You might not want to go into technical details because ultimately that also does not matter too much. There's a big FAQ section on our Provenance Proof website, which explains certain technical aspects about visibility, about security, and so on. You might want to read through that. And then one important point that you bring up is, how can I find vendors who are willing to sell me these gemstones that have the technology implemented? Okay, anyway, what we have a directory of companies, and out of the 300 plus companies that now are using the blockchain, about 200 or more than 200, so 2/3 of them have agreed to have their name displayed on our website. Just so you find all those 200 plus company names. These are miners, cutters, dealers, wholesalers, jewelers, gem labs from all continents. You basically see their names, and then you can search for them and you can contact them and tell them, hey, I've seen your name is on the Provenance Proof blockchain community. I'm interested in buying gemstones that come with this traceability. So I hope that does the trick. Go to provenanceproof.com, look for this community information. So what are the participants? What are the companies that are using it? It's not listing all companies because we give the users of this blockchain the freedom to decide if they do not want to display their name. If they don't want, they don't have to. They do not have to show their name to the public, but more than 200, in fact, were okay with that. So those names you can find. So you are, Hualane Product says, we have online color gemstone business. It's very difficult for us to make clients understand about all those variables. How can we make them understand online mode? Whoa, if it's technical issues that you have with using your online platform, I'm afraid I cannot help you. If you are referring to the different variables in terms of, the different properties of gemstones, there it might be something for you easy or something helpful if you go for something like the Gubelin gemstone rating service, because that is, as I said, taking different aspects, quality, color, clarity, transparency, cut, rarity, treatment, and compressing them in one number and giving some kind of orientation. At the end, they still might have questions and you still might have to explain them about your specific gemstone, what it is, but to kind of make it a bit easier for them to tame this complex beast of colored gemstones, the rating might be a help for those clients. Then DGY News would like to know how to stay updated on the new technology that Gubelin has to offer. How do I do so? Well, the easiest is go to the gubelingemlab.com webpage and register for the newsletter. Do the same for the provenanceproof.com website and register for the Provenance Proof newsletter, or at least we are not communicating too much. You might want to check our website from time to time so that you're going to get that information, or just give us a call. It's easy, you know, we are not a massively big company. Give us a call and we can help you. Imam H was asking if the origin of the stone is considered. No, it is not considered, for the reason that I explained. If you go on the gubelingemlab.com page and you go to the rating service, at the bottom there is a massive amount of frequently asked questions, and the question about why we have omitted origin is also exhaustively explained in that FAQ. Diana Bogoyeva is asking me if I think if blockchain will influence the end price of the gemstone. I don't know, Diana. So far, I believe it will not influence the end price of the gemstone. I don't think it will make it more expensive at all, because the technology is meanwhile so affordable. And as I said, for you guys out there using it, it is even free. It's just something that's gonna be a part of it that people expect over time, to have a technology that allows them to look into the history, into the provenance of a gemstone. Even with the emerald paternity test, that comes with a significant cost for the one that is buying the technology, the one that is applying it. Even these clients, they don't add it as a premium to their stone. They basically want to have that USP to give the peace of mind to their clients. Quite often, these clients are big jewelry brands. Christoph Daniel is asking, did you come up with a grading system for opals? Good question, Christoph. So far, the grading system or the rating system that we have is only, the scope is only for transparent gemstones, you know, because when rating quality, we have basically defined the rating parameters for transparent gemstones. So everything that is translucent or opaque, including opals, including jadeite, is not yet in the scope. So we are working on that, but I can't tell you yet when we're going to have those other gemstones, which are not usually faceted, how those going to be handled. However, we do offer the rating service for transparent stones that are cabochon, or star stones. We do offer that, but not for the translucent to opaque materials, or other special type of gemstones such as opals, because then we would have to rate different parameters, different aspects which are specific to opals, and we have not yet defined that. Yunus Rahman asked, what is the best ended color for the alexandrite stone, which your lab has interpreted? Whoa, that's a good question. I can't tell you from the top of my head what is the color that is considered the best. Obviously, you know, alexandrite, they show different colors under daylight and incandescent light. So the Russians might have their kind of typical colors, whereas the Brazilians from hematita might have their different colors, which is again different from the Indian ones or the Africans or Sri Lankan or African ones. So this is something I cannot tell you from the top of my head. I'm sorry for that. Anjum Cave Gave asks me, how do you arrange to educate the various personnel, particularly upstream, re-adding info to blockchain platform properly? Good question. Yeah, many people contact us and say, okay, how can I add that, that information to the blockchain? We do have tutorials. We do have online help that we are offering, both us as as a provenance proof, and also via our technology partner Everledger. And then it's also pretty intuitive. So many of the companies that are onboarding and starting to use the blockchain, they never call us. And we say, okay, maybe they might have a problem in using it, but then we find out, oh, we call them and then they say, no, we are already uploading hundreds of stone, it's all working fine. So it seems to be pretty intuitive. If you have a question or if you're aware of somebody having a question, contact us. Puroda Pereira is asking me, can you please advise on how we can start a gem trading business with no education around the industry? Can we do our own research on the industry, or is it compulsory to take courses? Ooh, big question. I mean, any business you want to start, you might want to have, you might need to have a certain level of understanding of the material you're dealing with or the service you're dealing with. So especially in colored gemstones, as I said, you know, this is such a complex area. I would probably highly recommend to do serious training and to feel comfortable in what you're doing. Otherwise, you might lose a lot of money. But I'm not the expert in that. Simran Gunyekhat asks, are the blockchain-proof gemstones available for purchases at market price or higher price? Again, you know, we do not see for which price these stones are ultimately sold. What we hear from the users of our platform, that they say they're not adding a premium to it. You know, but it might very much be the case that brands and jewelers are eventually asking for stones which come with this level of transparency, and they might reject stones which cannot provide this transparency into the supply chain upwards towards the mine. So it's probably more a question of, are you still in the game, or are you going to be rejected as a supplier by some brands or some jewelers altogether? And then you might have a limited number of clients that potentially are buying your stones. DJI News is asking, how much, do you define how much a gemstone has been heated? I assume you're asking that in context with the gemstone rating system. We do rate it, we have a certain range of heat treatment related to ruby specifically and sapphire. With rubies, certain type of rubies, we have the heat treatment with flux, so that we have some residues in fissures. So this is what GemLabs traditionally are quantifying, and we also have different steps of rating that we apply depending on the amount of residues. For most other gemstones that are heated, so something like Paraiba tourmaline or any kind of other gemstones, tourmalines in general, aquamarines, whatever other type of gemstones, we basically have a binary distinction whether they are heated or not heated. There we do not have different levels that we consider, both on our traditional GemLab reports, but also in applying the rating. Sumajit Maiti asks, what is the most common factor issue you following while grading the gemstone? Well, one difficulty is the consistency, of course. We do have quite tight guidelines given based on the experiences from the last almost 100 years of seeing stones. But still, to kind of make sure that every gemologist is applying the grading in exactly the same way, that we do not have a variance, that is a challenge, but we are dealing quite well with that challenge. Another challenge is rarity. As I explained, one factor of rarity, or one characteristic that goes into the rarity rating and hence into the total rating, the rarity is one part that contributes to the total rating. Now, rarity is depending on the time. So supply might change over time, and also demand might change over time. So this affects rarity. So it means that on a certain basis, so maybe once per year, we have to review our rarity factors. And this is something what we are busy with right now, establishing a network of people all over the world that going to help us revise from time to time the different rarity ratings depending on the availability of the market, so the supply and demand that we see in the global market. So that's one challenge, and also one fact that is going to affect the life expectancy of the rating as such. Can you please share the links of these websites here? Yes, I'm gonna do that. I will ask my colleagues at GemAtlas, Nicole, to share the websites of both Provenance Proof and also Gubelin GemLab. I think that was also part of the last slide. I might then show it up again. Jyoti Agarwal is asking, is this service available in India? Well, the Gubelin GemLab does not have an office in India. However, we do have daily shuttle services between India and our lab in Switzerland. I think one is going from Jaipur, the other one is going from Delhi. Go to our website. There's a page that is listing some 20 plus cities worldwide where we have these shuttles. And as I said, there are 2 cities in India, Jaipur and Delhi, are connected with, I'm not even sure if it's Delhi, maybe it's Mumbai. But we have 2 cities in India which are connected with a direct shuttle to our lab in Switzerland. So that makes the shipping of stones very convenient. And alternatively, you can also go to Hong Kong, you can go to New York and have the stones brought over there. Chloe Woodman-Stern is asking, with the blockchain technology, are there any safeguards in place to prevent stones from being swapped in that haven't actually been sourced from the original mine? Very good question. The blockchain technology as such does not stop anyone to writing false information in the blockchain. So if somebody wants, he can take a pitch black piece of rock, enter it in the blockchain, and state that this is a pigeon blood red ruby, millions of dollars value. The technology as such does not stop him or her doing that. However, keep in mind, blockchain is giving a certain visibility. So if I'm that guy doing that, kind of completely overrating stone, or I get a stone and then I swap it with a worthless stone, I have to be aware of the fact that when I give on my stone, and if I give on this digital logbook, the subsequent owners will see very quickly that there was some wrong information coming into this logbook, and they're gonna see where this information, where this faulty or kind of bullshit information was coming in. So unless in the past where the supply chain was much more intransparent, when there was kind of fragmented, the information got disrupted. Now in the age of blockchain, of traceability, trackability, it is much more difficult for me to kind of get away, with something like that. So it is quite likely that I'm going to be identified as the source of wrong information. So I will think twice before I do something like that when I have stones on the blockchain. Imam is asking, Paracha sapphires often fade when stability check applied in some cases. Will it affect rating? Very good point. The Paracha sapphires, they can fade, the color can change. when exposed to different sources of light, before we give the term paparacha to a stone, we will apply that stability check. Then if the stone falls out, if the, so to say, if the sapphire does not pass successfully that stability check, we will also not call it paparacha. And then we will also rate it not as a paparacha, but as a orange sapphire or as a pink sapphire, respectively. So yes, it does affect the rating. It depends on what variety a gemstone belongs to. We first have to determine the variety of a gemstone, and only then we're going to apply the rating. Good, we have more questions. Quite amazing to see how active you are. It's really, I enjoy it a lot, and it's good to have such an active audience. Do you cover lab-grown stones too? Well, we do test lab-grown stones, if you want, as a gem lab. With the gemstone rating, we do not apply the rating to lab-grown stones. The rating we only apply to natural gemstones, transparent, faceted, or polished, which have been subjective either to no treatment or to kind of one of the standard treatments. So traditional heat treatment, standard heat treatment, or clarity enhancement, so oiling or a resin or something like that. If the stone gets heated with beryllium or any other type of diffusion treatment, if the rubies, for example, get are lead glass treated, if the stone is irradiated and we can show that it's irradiated or any other treatment, then it falls out of the scope and we do not apply the gemstone rating. Jyoti Agarwal is asking, like solitaire, can we have laser inscription on gemstones for identification? Well, that's not something we are offering. You know, other labs might. We are not offering any kind of laser inscription for the time being. Ruby is asking, how do you determine the rarity of gemstones? The rarity of gemstones we have basically determined by looking into our database. You know, what have we seen over the last couple of decades? And then we also have had many talks with experts in colored gemstones in the trade. So we have talked to many people. They have given us their recommendations in comparison with other type of gemstones. So that's what we do. The parameters that are influencing the rarity of gemstone is the type of gemstone, and then the treatments, as I said, and also the size. So these are the three factors that are influencing this rarity part of the rating. Please elaborate on what you mean by salience. How do you determine what sticks out of the crowd for gemstones? So I might want to give you a bit of the history why we came up with salience at all. We have this quality criteria, you know, and these quality criteria are somehow fairly objective. You know, a stone is either having a perfectly red hue or it might have a purplish red hue. The stone might have a certain level of transparency. You can rate the homogeneity of the stone. You can rate the cut and the brilliance of the stone. That is not too complex. But we found out also in discussion specifically with jewelry brands, you know, jewelry brands quite often, they define their criteria on what they want to purchase for their jewelry. And they are defining some kind of the quality criteria. Then they end up with stones that are successfully passing the criteria that this company has defined, but nobody likes the stone. Or the other way around. They have stones which fall out. They do not pass all the criteria. Maybe the clarity is not right or the hue is a bit off, but everybody loves the stone. And this is a problem somehow. And now the interesting thing is these type of stones that might not fulfill the criteria, certain criteria that a jewelry brand is defining, not only these purchasing managers or purchasing staff loves the stone, but this seems quite often there's a general consensus in the trade that almost everybody loves that stone. The color might be off. The color might be completely off what is considered ideal, but there seems to be a general consensus among professionals that this stone is nice and that this stone can be sold. The other way around as well, stones that might pass the criteria, you know, they are perfectly fine. They are taking this quality threshold, all aspects of the quality threshold, but nobody really kind of gets, you know, falls in love with that stone. Nobody really kind of wants to have that stone. There as well, quite often there's a general consensus among almost every professional that this stone is nothing that is really touching your heart. And to address that part, you know, this kind of more of a gut feeling, but which seems to be a shared gut feeling among many people in the trade, professional people, to reflect that. That's why we have introduced this salience category. That is one reason for that. Again, please go to the website gubelingemlab.com. If you go to services, you find the big button gemstone rating, and go to the bottom of the page, gemstone rating. There are about 15-20 questions, and one of them is explaining quite in detail our motivation of coming up with salience. There's even more information about that. Good. Then there is a last question from Ritesh. Please, could you explain the part on clicking pictures of the gemstones easily for miners and blockchain again? I got a bit lost. Okay, what I mean is when making an entry into the blockchain, so you have a stone, say you are a cutter and you have received the stone from the miner, and the miner is forwarding you the hash. So the digital twin gets forwarded to you, you accept that hash, and then you have kind of the digital logbook in your hand. And you can see what the miner was describing. The stone has 15 carat, it has this color, and he made a picture of the rough crystal. Now you do your work, you cut the stone, and it turns out to be a 6 carat something, and this is the color, and this is how it looks like. Then you do not only fill those fields in this UX, you know, in this user interface, UI user interface, you also can enter rich data such as pictures. You can even make a movie how you are cutting the stone. You can even add information about your company, you know, how great a company you are, what you are supporting, you know, what is your mission and so on. All this kind of information you can add to the blockchain. The retailer at the end of the value chain might not want to show all of that information, but if he wants, you know, if his clientele is interested how cutting is done in India or in a specific place, he might then have access to the videos, to the pictures that you did, you know, and can use that in his storytelling. That's what I meant with using pictures, clicking pictures on the gemstones. It's basically just adding rich data to this logbook, this digital logbook. Good. As far as I see, I don't have any other questions. I think we are about 1 hour and a bit more. So I give over to you, Nicole, if that is fine with you.
Yes, thank you so much, Daniel. I think it was an amazing webinar, and we want to thank you for sharing your valuable time and expertise with all of us and having such an informative session. We would also love to thank our audience for such an active participation throughout, and we hope that you enjoyed the session and use this knowledge to the best of your advantage in your respective fields. If you have any further questions, you can definitely email it at info@gematlas.com, and we will forward the same to Dr. Daniel. Thank you so much once again, and have a great day.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, everyone. Have a good time.